The call came just after 9. I had just poured myself a cup of chamomile and settled into Walter's chair. His chair still bearing the shape of his shoulders and the faintest scent of cedar and pipe smoke. My phone buzzed against the table, and I didn't recognize the number, but I answered anyway. Mrs. Elridge, a woman asked, her voice clipped and clinical. "This is Dr. Crane's office. Is now a good time?" Those words never come before anything good. She went on. Hematology panel, abnormalities, CT follow-up, suspicious shadows. Then she paused, that terrible, courteous pause before the blade drops. "We believe you may have an advanced form of pancreatic cancer. Dr. Crane would like to speak with you in person, but based on the current information we estimate, perhaps a month." I don't remember saying goodbye. I don't remember setting the phone down. The mug had gone cold by the time I realized I'd been staring at nothing for almost an hour. A month? 4 weeks. 30 days. That was what remained. I thought of Walter. Then not just his absence, but the careful life he built for us. The labeled folders in his fireproof box, the mutual funds I never touched, the accounts he rolled over so meticulously. "You'll be fine if anything ever happens to me," he had said once, arms around me in bed. "Just don't let the money make you anyone you're not." It hadn't. But now, facing what I thought was my end, I realized I'd never truly tested what that money meant to anyone else. I reached for the phone again, hands steady this time. I dialed my daughter's number. "Tessa, I need you to come by this evening. There's something we need to talk about." Tessa arrived alone, which surprised me. Lyle was usually glued to her, especially when there was talk of anything involving money or decisions. But she said he was working late, something about a meeting with a potential investor. I didn't press. I just ushered her into the sitting room, where Walter's fireplace still gave the illusion of warmth, even though I hadn't lit it since before Thanksgiving. She sat on the edge of the couch like she was waiting to be dismissed. Her coat was too formal for the weather, her smile too practiced. "I thought you sounded odd on the phone," she said, crossing her legs and glancing around the room like it might offer a clue. "I saw Dr. Crane this week," I began. "They found something. I don't want to drag this out." Her posture straightened. She blinked twice. "What kind of something?" "Pancreatic cancer," I said. "They think I have about a month." She stared at me, mouth slightly open. Her lip twitched. "A month? That's fast." I nodded. Yes. She didn't cry, not even a hand to her mouth, just that same thoughtful frown she wore when reading fine print. "I don't even know what to say," she said finally. "You don't have to say anything. I just wanted you to know." Silence stretched between us. Then she reached for my hand. Her fingers were cool, dry. "We'll take care of everything. You won't go through this alone." That should have comforted me. But something in the phrasing, it was too clean, too ready. She cleared her throat. "Have you told Jasper yet? About the will, I mean?" "No." "Why, I just meant, well, if you'd like help updating anything, so it's less stressful later." She smiled again, gentle, but her eyes didn't linger on mine. They slid over to the mantel, then the bookshelves, then the framed photo of Walter in his workshop. "Lyle can come by this weekend," she continued. "He's really good with organizing paperwork. I'm not ready to start making decisions just yet," I said, pulling my hand back. "Of course," she said quickly. "Of course I didn't mean to rush anything." But she did. I felt it. In the slight shift of her weight toward the door. In the way she checked her phone the moment I looked away. I watched her leave 20 minutes later with a long hug and a whispered promise. "We'll be here for you, Mom. Every step." She didn't know I stayed at the window until her car backed out, engine running, before she even shut the door. By the time I turned off the hallway light, I knew something had shifted. Something small, imperceptible if I hadn't known my daughter better. I hadn't even buried the truth yet, and already it was being weighed, catalogued. measured for its worth. That night, I didn't sleep. Not because I was afraid of dying, but because for the first time, I wasn't sure who I would be leaving my life behind to. The next evening, Tessa came back this time with Lyle. They brought takeout from that overpriced Italian place they always insisted I loved. I smiled politely as they unpacked the boxes, but I didn't eat much. My appetite had disappeared the moment I saw the way Lyle scanned the house like he was confirming something. "Still got the antique clock?" he asked, nodding toward the hallway. "That's worth something, you know." "Only to me," I said. Dinner was filled with pleasantries, and their laughter was just loud enough to feel rehearsed. They asked how I was feeling, but they didn't wait long for the answer. By 8, they said they were tired and going to bed early, offering to stay in the guest room just in case I needed anything during the night. I nodded and said goodnight. Then I waited. It must have been close to 11 when I stepped into the hallway. I was headed for the linen closet, nothing more than routine, until I heard voices. The guest room door was cracked just enough. I didn't mean to stop, but what I heard rooted me in place. "She has to have more than what she's told us," Lyle whispered. "The house alone is worth 7 figures. "We'll find out soon enough," Tessa replied, her voice quieter. "Once we see the will, we'll know if she left it all clean or if we'll have to manage it. You think she'll leave anything to Elena?" A pause. "If she does, it won't be much. Elena barely calls." They both laughed low and dry. My legs felt heavy, my breath thinner than it should have been. I backed away, careful not to let the floor creak. In the kitchen, I poured myself a glass of water I didn't need. I stared at the glass for a long time, hands steady, despite the tremor in my chest. They weren't grieving, they were circling, and it wasn't my life they were preparing for. It was the after. I turned off the kitchen light, walked upstairs, and shut my bedroom door with a softness that didn't match the weight in my chest. I wasn't sure what disturbed me more, that they were talking about my death, or how comfortable they seemed doing it. The call came the next morning, just after dawn. I answered on the second ring, still wrapped in my robe, the night's unease clinging to my skin. "Mrs. Elridge, it's Dr. Crane." Her voice was different, careful, tight, with something that sounded like embarrassment. "There's been a mistake," she said. "A clerical error. The lab mixed up your results with another patient. A Marge Eldridge, similar name, similar age. I reviewed everything myself. You're healthy, Margot. There's no cancer." I didn't speak right away. I stared at the edge of the table, tracing the grain of the wood with my thumb. Not dying, not even sick. "I'm so sorry," she added. I thanked her, hung up. Healthy, still here. And yet I could still hear Tessa's voice from the night before. "We'll find out soon enough, once we see the will." I stood at the window and watched the frost dissolve from the glass as the morning sun inched higher. They'd already begun preparing for my death, quietly, efficiently. Like I'd left the room and they didn't expect me back. I could call them, tell them the truth, relieve them of the charade, but a different thought settled over me, one colder than the morning air, and far more honest. What if I didn't? What if I let this play out 1 month? Just one. Enough to see what my daughter was willing to become when she thought I wasn't looking. I poured myself a fresh cup of coffee, suddenly steady again. If they thought I was dying, they'd show me who they really were. And this time, I'd be watching with both eyes open. That evening, I laid out the dinner plates as if nothing had changed. Tessa and Lyle moved in the following Monday. Tessa said it made more sense this way. No commuting, no worrying about emergencies in the middle of the night. She framed it like a kindness, like sacrifice. I simply nodded and stepped aside. Within 48 hours, they had rearranged the entire guest room, bringing in their own bedding, their own toiletries, even Lyle's ergonomic office chair, which he dragged through my hallway, like he'd lived here all along. I kept a mental list of what changed. My favorite mug disappeared, replaced by a matching set from their condo. Walter's tools in the garage were packed into plastic tubs and stacked neatly in a corner to make room for medical supplies. Tessa turned my old sewing room into a quiet workspace for Lyle, since he would be handling most of the logistics. They were gentle with their words, firm with their movements. They touched everything with a kind of rehearsed reverence that only deepened the unease in my chest. They cooked for me every evening. Tessa portioned my vitamins into a labeled container. Lyle helped me up the stairs as if my bones were already brittle. It might have even felt tender if I hadn't known what they were really waiting for. On Thursday, Tessa approached me with a manila folder and a soft voice. Mom, Lyle and I met with someone today, an estate planner. Just preliminary. Nothing binding. I flipped open the folder. Power of attorney documents, advance directives. A revised draft of a will unsigned but clearly prepared, with names filled in. Their names. I thought we were going to review all of this together, I said. Tessa tilted her head that same way she used to when I corrected her in high school. We just wanted to ease the burden. You shouldn't have to think about paperwork now. Lyle added, We can go over it when you're ready. No pressure. I closed the folder, handed it back. Soon, I said. They smiled, relieved. But I saw it. Then the shift. They were no longer pretending to wait for my permission. They were just pretending to be patient. The next day, Tessa brought up hospice. Not directly. She called it comfort care and pulled up a website on her tablet during dinner, acting like she was just browsing. Some of these places have amazing reputations, she said. Private rooms, gardens, spiritual counselors. Lyle chimed in. We could always tour a few, just to be prepared. I nodded and took another bite of my casserole, chewing slowly as they planned the shape of my final weeks. The performance was seamless, devoted, efficient, gentle, but every glance between them told me exactly what they were calculating. I was becoming less of a person, more of a transition, something to be managed. I started sleeping with my door locked. It was past midnight when I crept down to the basement. Tessa and Lyle were asleep, or at least quiet, behind their closed door. I moved carefully, one hand on the railing, the other clutching the ring of old keys Walter had kept in his top drawer. The safe was hidden behind the cabinet wall, just like he'd left it. I knelt, slowly unlocked the door, and opened it to the cool smell of metal and paper. Inside, everything was exactly as I remembered, files labeled in Walter's handwriting, stacks of correspondence, old tax forms. I reached for the folder marked Survivor Assets and carried it upstairs. At the kitchen table under the small lamp by the fridge, I flipped through page after page of what Walter had spent years building. Securities accounts, bond portfolios, deferred annuities. Nearly $2.4 million, all in my name, carefully allocated for long-term growth and security. Tessa had never asked about any of it, not directly. Only about life insurance, which I'd always described in vague terms. But then I saw it, an email, printed and clipped to the back of the folder. Walter had forwarded it to Tessa. Just so you understand what your mother will have access to if something happens to me, he had written. Keep this safe. It's for her protection. The attachment was everything: full financials, login, credentials, contacts. It was dated 5 months before he died. I sat back in the chair, cold settling in my chest. She had known. She'd known before he was even gone. All this time, her silence hadn't been about respect. It had been about waiting. Quietly, precisely. The same way she now timed my medications, managed my appointments, whispered with Lyle behind closed doors. Grief might make people selfish, but this was something else entirely. I put the documents back in the folder and slid them under the false bottom of the cabinet drawer where I kept my sewing supplies. Then I turned out the light and climbed the stairs. One deliberate step at a time. They weren't circling just for the will. They had already read the map. I waited until Lyle took a phone call on the back porch and Tessa went to the store just for milk to make the call. Jasper answered on the third ring, his voice still crisp despite the early hour. "Margot, he said I was just thinking about you." "I need to meet," I said. "Privately. And soon." He didn't ask questions. Just gave me a time and told me to come through the back entrance, as if he'd sensed the weight in my voice. That afternoon in his quiet office lined with ledgers and a photo of his late wife, I laid out everything. The fake diagnosis, the overheard conversations, the folder in the basement, and what I knew Tessa had been given years ago. Jasper didn't interrupt. He listened, leaning back slowly, fingertips pressed together. When I finished, he sat forward and said, "Do you want to confront them?" "No," I said. "I want them to confront themselves. I want to give them the chance to show me exactly who they've become." He nodded once. "Then we'll do it your way." We worked out the details. A gathering, something small, intimate, for closure, I'd say. They wouldn't refuse. Jasper would come as a friend, blending in, but at the right moment, he'd have the documents ready. The real will. The revocation of power of attorney. The trust that would bypass them entirely. "No confrontation unless you want it," he assured me. "But if they push, I'll be there to make sure they don't push far." Back at home, I smiled when Tessa handed me the groceries and Lyle offered to reheat soup. I thanked them both and played my role. Weak, tired, trusting. Let them arrange the seating. Let them plan the goodbyes. I would be the one writing the ending. They made salmon. Tessa's version of elegant comfort. She set the table with cloth napkins and candles, and Lyle poured wine like we were celebrating something. I smiled, folded my hands in my lap, and said nothing. "We thought it would be nice," Tessa said softly, "to share a quiet evening. Just the three of us. Something to remember," Lyle added. They both looked at me too long, like they were memorizing the moment. Or rehearsing it for later. Midway through the meal, Tessa brought out a folder. Cream-colored new, tied with a satin ribbon. "No pressure," she said again, always that phrase. "But we did update a few things. To help you." I opened it. The same documents. Power of attorney. A revised will. Authorization to transfer control of the trust. Walter's trust. My name already typed, waiting only for a signature. Lyle handed me a pen. I didn't reach for it. Instead, I leaned back and looked at them both. "I'm glad you made dinner," I said. "I've been meaning to have someone over." They blinked. Tessa tilted her head, confused. The doorbell rang. Lyle stood, but I raised my hand. "I'll get it." I opened the door to Jasper, calm in his gray overcoat, holding a leather briefcase and a manila envelope. He stepped inside, nodded once at Tessa and Lyle, and laid the envelope gently on the table. "These are copies," he said, "of emails, drafts, and documents, some yours, some forged in your favor. You've been very busy." Tessa's face went pale. Lyle reached for the folder in front of me, but I placed my hand on it. "I'm not dying," I said, my voice steady, "but something is. The illusion that you ever loved me." Jasper sat beside me, calm and deliberate, as I turned to the last page and picked up the pen. The documents were signed that night. Jasper witnessed everything. I kept my expression calm, even as Tessa's voice trembled and Lyle's mouth went tight with disbelief. Neither of them spoke when they left. They didn't pack that night. They just vanished before sunrise. By the end of the week, the locks were changed. Walter's safe was emptied, and every account transferred into the new foundation we named after him, the Walter Elridge Fund for Dignity and Education. The money would go where it mattered. Not to the ones who waited for me to die, but to those trying to live with purpose. Elena came to visit the following weekend. She didn't know all the details. I didn't need her to. She hugged me without asking questions and offered to help me carry boxes to the car. I told her about the foundation, about the scholarship in her name, about the stipulations not as punishment, but as possibility. She would have support if she stayed in school and gave something back. Her eyes filled, but she nodded. I moved the next Monday. A small cottage outside Asheville perched just far enough into the trees that the mornings are still. I bring my coffee to the porch and let the silence settle around me. No voices down the hall, no clocks ticking toward some imagined end. For 30 days, I let them believe I was slipping away. I gave them room to show me what they valued, who they were, and where I stood in their lives. I gave them a month to reveal their truth. They gave me the rest of my life to live it.